Okay, so good day, everyone, and welcome back to the second part of our Build Your Forex Robot class without coding. Kicking off from where we left off the last time, we actually ended up building our first robot, which we actually named for the day, I think was 17th of March, right? And so we're going to take it a step further and try and optimize that EE. Now, the logic of what we're trying to do was we're trying to build a robot that will execute trades on our behalf based on two simple conditions: the crossover of two exponential moving averages. And from the flowchart, we had, I said, first, we want the EA to check if they are open trades. So we have the check trade conditions, that's this one. And then next, if they are open trades, then remember we told the EA to do nothing, right? So if there's an open trade, we want the EA to do nothing. And then if there are no open trades, then we want to check the indicators to look whether we can open a buy or a sell trade. Now, in today's class, we're going to, change this from doing nothing. So if there are no open positions, we want our EA to check, like if there are no open trades, right? We want our EA to do something else, right? To check for previous existing trade, right? So if the answer is yes, that they are open trades, we want the EA to check those open trades and take an action depending on if certain parameters are met. So let me see if I can, let's go back to our FX Dreamer web platform. Let me see if I can load up our previous project, which we built quite simply. So let me see. Okay, I don't know, it's taking time. Anyway, so for those of you who you know how I explained the FX Dreamer platform, we use this to be able to easily build our EAs. Let's see what's the name of that class again. Did I? Seems I didn't save it. Okay. Anyway, but you can obviously refer back to the previous class, I think, and the raw file for that, I also sent it to the Telegram channel, I think. Anyway, moreover, we'll proceed. I'll quickly redo what we did the last time, and then we'll look to optimize it. So just a quick one. One of the first things we said we're going to do was to check trade conditions, right? So we'll check trade conditions. If there are no open trades, then we want our EA to look at the exponential moving average and decide to take action. Now, so what we're going to do today is, instead of what we did the last time, is I'm going to try and make this as clean as possible. Now, if you have any understanding about with programming or coding or anything, you understand what I mean when I say we declare variables. So basically, in our last session, in our last part one of this particular training, we just went through by adding functions to get the results. Now, so what we're going to do is we're going to try and make it a little bit cleaner so that we can reference certain things so as we're done building it, we can actually reference certain things or change certain things as we move. So up here, you'll see constants and input. You could just click on that, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to just define constants and so that we can reference them within the structure of what we're building. Now, in the same way it is with programming, double stands for numbers that can have decimal places. Integers stand for whole numbers, Boolean, true and false. You could do the same thing here. So we're going to just declare our first variable or first constant, and we're going to call this lots, right? So this is going to be the volume that we use, our lot size, and it's going to be double because it's have decimal place. And the value would be, let's give it 0.1, and then we'll add another variable, and let this one be integer, so it should be a whole number. And what we're going to do, we're going to call this EMA underscore, let's call it fast. Now, basically, remember what we talked about, what we discussed the last time. The idea of what we're trying to do is, well, when price is moving, so let me draw on my screen. So let's assume the market is moving in this sort of fashion. What we notice when we add moving averages, so let's say we add the 10-period moving average, it would look something like this. And then we add the 20-period moving average, it will look something like this. So basically, the whole idea is in an uptrend, right? In an uptrend, the moving averages tend to stay below price. And then in a downtrend, you will get a crossover, and then the moving average would tend to stay above price. Now, so the idea is this red one, which will be the fast moving average, is usually closer to price. So it's the moving average with the shorter time period. So it's faster than the other one. So we're going to refer to it, in this case, the red one, as fast, right? I hope that makes sense. Now, we're going to remember what we did, basically back to our blueprint. We're using the 10-period moving average for fast and the 20-period moving average for slow. So that's exactly what I'm trying to do. So I declare the first constant or variable, EMA fast, and I'm going to call this 10, make it 10. And then we'll define another constant, also integer, EMA. Now, you don't have to do this. This way would help you. The advantage of doing it this way as opposed to the other one is you can always, at least it's easier to know what you're doing, or to be able to play around certain values, right? Instead of having to change them in line. So if I want to change the moving average from 10 to 20, instead of going to change it everywhere that I referenced it, I'll just come here and change it to 20, and it will change everywhere. So that's basically the idea. So we'll call this slow, and this will be 20-period moving average. Now, we can obviously come back here, and if we want to use certain value, define them and use them. Don't think I'm forgetting anyone. Let's also add stop. Okay, so we're not going to use stop loss and take profit in this particular instance. We're not going to use stop loss and take profit in this particular instance. We're actually going to use another moving average, and I'm going to come back to it later. So let's click on updates so we can begin building. So click on updates, and we can close that. So you can always get that from constant here. So if we're using actual stop loss and take profit, you can easily just come here and put SL. Stop loss would be an integer because it has to be a whole number, and then you can make that integer, maybe name it SL or something, and give it your value. But we're not going to do that. Like I said, we are going to use a dynamic stop loss. We don't want stop loss or take profits. There's actually going to be stop loss, but it's actually going to be dynamic, because remember, it's a trend-based EA. At least the idea is, if the market is trending, this would work fine. So when we get a good trade in a trendy market, we want to try and capture as much of the profits within that market as possible. Okay. Just to recap, I hope you guys are following. Just quickly give me your feedback if you're following. Yes, if what I'm saying is making sense, just type in yes as well, so I know. Okay, so moving forward, let's proceed to building the rest of the code. So we say no trade, so we want to check for if there are no trade, both buy and sell trade. So no trade, buy and sell trade, that's fine. We can click on updates and proceed. Okay, so yes, okay. Now, when you go to functions, to conditions here, what we want to do is define the conditions for buy and sell. Now, you'll see me kind of click this in a neater way as to what we did last class, because in the last class it was just a rough sketch of introducing you to the FX Dreamer platform. But I'm approaching this obviously with my background in development and coding. I'm approaching this and this would be quite useful for you, especially when you're building really sophisticated EAs that would have lots of moving parts. You want to define things clearly. You want to name things clearly, so you when you look at it, you should be able to understand certain things, and if there are bugs or if things are not working properly, you know where to reference. So we'll pick out the condition. What I'll do here is I'm going to rename this. So I'll click on edit title and rename this buy condition. So I know that this is my buy condition. And then I'll pick another one, just rename it sell condition. Okay. So we have our buy condition and our sell condition. So if there are no trades, we want our EA to look at the buy condition. If it's met, then execute the code here. Otherwise, look at the sell condition. If it's met, execute the code there. So it's going to be either or. It's never going to be both of them. So it's either there's a buy condition met or there's a sell condition met, not both of them. So what we're going to do now is clarify or basically explain define what the buy condition is. Now we go back to our drawing board. Now there's a reason I like to teach like this, because you'd understand it. I hope you'd understand it better. So we're referencing our blueprints to figure out what we're trying to do. Now, the actual body of the actual reason for our buying and selling has not really changed. We still want to look to buy, right, when the 10-period moving average crosses above 20. Right, so when the 10-period moving average crosses above the 20, we want to buy. And when the 10 period crosses below the 20, we want to sell. So how do we define that? So we go into our buy conditions, just double click on it. It will open up. We are looking at indicator, we're looking at moving average, that's fine. And then you can see here that says moving average period. In the last class, what we did was we put 10 here, right? And that was our moving average period. But what we're going to do instead of putting 10 there will be to just right click on that place and select EMA fast. So you can see why we're doing this, right? So now instead of putting 10, I'll just select EMA fast, which is still 10, right? And then obviously we're looking at the exponential moving average. We want to make sure that we're looking at candle ID 1, which is the just concluded candle. And what is the condition? We are looking to buy when the moving at the fast moving average or the 10-period moving average crosses above the 20-period moving average. So we do X greater than. Then we come here, cross above EMA 20s, but instead of using 20, we'll just do the same thing, right click and select EMA slow. So right now, let's say I don't want to, if I want to change my fast EMA from 10 to 5 or from 10 to 15, instead of going to everywhere I used, I referenced it, I'll just go to the constant and change it there and it will reflect on the code everywhere. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So we'll make sure we're looking at the exponential moving average, ensure we're looking at candle ID 1, which is the just concluded candle. Everything looks good, and we click on update. So again, once that updates, okay, so that's done. Again, what this means is EA checks if there are no trades, it will go down these two routes. So it will check this buy condition and this sell condition. Now, the buy and the sell conditions can never occur at the same time. It's either this or that. So if it checks the buy condition and it is met, it will execute what is inside here, which would be to buy. Otherwise, if it is not met, it will check the sell condition. And if it is met, it will execute what is inside here. Sometimes, obviously, most times it will check both the buy and the sell, and they will not be met, and it will do nothing. Okay, so you get it that way. So let's define our sell condition. So we double click here, and then we, so let me double click there. Okay, and then we do the same thing. So EMA period, we would use our fast EMA, right? And make sure we're looking at the exponential moving average. Ensure we're looking at candle ID 1. And then for our EMA slow, we reference our slow moving average, exponential. I'm speeding up a bit because we're going to cover quite a bit. Candle ID 1 as well. So let's make this candle ID 1. Okay, so we're looking at crosses below. So when the, what happened? Okay, when the fast moving average crosses below, that's close price. When the fast moving average crosses below the slow moving average, we want to execute our sell code. Okay, so we click on that, click on updates, and that is done. So what we do? Well, if the buy condition is met, we want to buy. Otherwise, if the sell condition is met, we want to sell. So just drag this to buy and drag this to sell. Okay, and then what we do is double click here. Remember, I said, so this is what we did the last time. We used a fixed stop loss, right? So we use a fixed stop loss of, I think, 30. So that's why we put 30 here, right? And then we use a fixed take profit of 60. Now, like I said, we're not going to be using a hard-coded stop loss. We're going to be using dynamic stop loss and no take profits. Our take profits will be decided by some conditions that we'll define, okay? So just the same way we did the EMA fast and the EMA slow, if you are using stop loss, or if you're building an EA that you're using stop loss, you can define, in the constant here, you can define the stop loss and then just reference it here and all. But we're not using a stop loss, so we'll just select no stop loss and no take profits. And then for our lots, remember we defined that, so we just select our lots and we click on updates. We do the same for the sell side. And so just double click on that. Select our lots, no stop loss, and no take profits. Okay. Now, obviously, you want to trade with stop loss and take profits, or at least I have a way of managing that, right? Now, we can, so I can just right click and select create area. So all of this is in one area. Don't mind me, I like aesthetics. So I like to get things looking proper. Okay. So that is that. So basically, what this does is it will check trade conditions. If there are no trades, it will check the buy conditions. If it is met, it will buy. Otherwise, it will check the sell condition. If it is met, it will sell. Now, I'm not going to test this now. We're going to just continue building so that we can we don't have much time. Okay, so now what we want to do, because we're not using stop loss and take profits, right? The reason is this, at least based on this idea. When the market moves, it moves like this in an uptrend, and then maybe begins to break down and goes to a downtrend. So it's usually comes from an uptrend to a downtrend and vice versa. And then we expect the moving averages to do something like this. So in an uptrend, when the market is about to change from downtrend to uptrend, would expect the moving averages to cross over something like this. So let's say this is the 10-period moving average, and let's say this is the 20-period moving average. So in an uptrend, the slow moving average is below. So we'll have some sort of crossover like this, where this one comes down, and so this is our target area. So areas like this where there is a crossover of both moving averages. You can see that, right? So let me take away some of those. So what we are trying to do now is this. Previously, what we did is when the crossover happened, right, the EA would take a buy at the close of that candle, right? So if let's say this is the candle like at the close of the candle, the EA will take a buy. We'll put our stop loss 30 pips, put our take profits 20 pips. Okay. So what we're going to do instead of using hard-coded stop loss is, well, we're going to allow the trade continue to be open. The buying criteria and the selling criteria is still the same. So when there's a crossover, that will be the reason for buying and or reason for selling. But instead of using hard stop loss or using a hard-coded stop loss, we're going to use the crossover of the moving average at the other end as a reason to close the trade. So for instance, in this particular example here, if we buy because this red moving average has crossed below the blue one, we will hold on to this trade until the red one crosses below the blue one. So this way, if the market is trending, we will capture a good part of the trend. I hope that makes sense, okay? So let's, the question now you ask yourself is, so how do we do this? Now, it's just like, this is just in the same way of like you are building a code or anything. You have to figure out, you have to be creative in your thought as to what you want to achieve and how you can do it. Now, there are multiple ways, just like if you give 2 different or 10 different developers to code a particular thing or to build a particular, solve a particular problem with, let's say, C++ or Java or whatever, or any particular language, they would not write their code exactly the same way, but they could achieve the same result. Some could be smoother, some could be, much more compact, but they could achieve the same result. So there's no one way of doing certain things. It's just about your creativity as to how you can interact, think about how you move around the different components, okay? So let's try and do this. Let's clear all of this. And by the way, I hope everybody's still following. So let's try and define this. So the question now is, how do we, remember this function here or this part of the EA, if you're coding, we'll say this part of the code controls how we open trades, why trades are open. So we can rename this, let's just call it open trades, right? So this is what the but looks at to open a trade. Now, what we want to do is define conditions to close an existing trade, right? Which is why we did not use stop loss. So what we're going to do now is build another set of code, if you wish, another set of functions. So what we'll do is I'll go to check trade conditions and I'll say if trade, right? Those of you who understand coding, you understand if else and all. So if trade, that means if there's a trade, then look at this place. If there is no trade, this particular line of code will not be executed, right? So if there's a trade, then look at this. Now we're going to rename this to if buy trade. So it's clear. Don't have to rename it though. So let's just say if buy trade. Let's click on this. And then we'll double click it and then make sure we're filtering by type. So select buys only and then click on update. So if there's an open trade, so remember, yes, let's go back to our sketch. Before we're saying if there's no open trade, check if there are open trades, which is this no trade. So it's checking that there are no trades. And then in the past, we were looking at if there is an open trade, do nothing, right? Now, what we want to do is if there's an open trade, we'll probably check this to check open trades, right? So I'm not going to change that anyway. So what we'll do is we'll check if there's an open buy trade, and we can also do the same thing and say check if there's an open sell trade. So let's rename this. Edit, rename if sell trade. Okay, so let's click on done. Now, done as well. Now, if buy, what do we want to do? Remember my drawing. We buy, the reason we're looking to get into a buy is because the slow moving or this fast moving average crosses above the slow, right? Let me draw again. We were looking to buy, or we look to buy because the fast moving average has crossed above the slow, right? This is the slow and this is the fast. So we look to buy when the fast crosses above the slow. That means we want to close the buy when the fast crosses below the slow. That means at the point where, so this slow is moving like this, and this fast is moving like this. The point where the fast now goes below the slow, we want to close our previously open buy position. So let's figure out how to do that. Okay, so we close this. So how do we define that? We still use conditions. So it's just like with coding, you use lots of functions or variables with lots of if-else statements. So if there's a buy trade, check this condition. And if it is met, close the buy trade. Otherwise, if the trade is a sell trade, check that condition. And then if the conditions are met, close the sell trade. So let's rename this to let's close buy. And name it anything you want. So just so that you can understand what you're trying to do. So close buy condition. So what do we want to do? We'll just go and define it here again, explain our condition. So double click on that. So it opens up. If you would respond to me, okay. Okay, so now you can see why it's important, or why the reason I declared constant, declared our variables, initialize them is quite useful, because otherwise I'd have to be, putting the moving average period up and down. And then let's say after testing, I figure out that I want to use a 20 period moving average and a 40 period moving average. I'll have to come and start changing 20, 40 everywhere, where I can just go to the constant and change it in just one place, okay? So we'll use our fast moving average, make sure we're looking at exponential, make sure we're looking at the current candle. And then what's the condition to close a buy? We want to close the buy when the fast moving average crosses below the slow moving average. So we'll have X less than, right? So we'll have our X less than condition. So make here slow, make sure we're looking at the exponential and adjust our candle ID to 1. So this is basically the condition. So if the fast moving average crosses below the slow moving average, then what do we want to do? So click on updates. We want to close the buy trade. So click on updates. Then you can come to trading action here. You see close trade. So we'll just click and drag, and this would be close trade. So we'll modify it to close only the buy trades, right? So double click again and go to filter by type and select buys. Okay, click on updates. So we drag this like so. That means if there's a buy trade, check this condition. If this condition is met, close buy. So let's actually edit this to say close buy. Close buy trade. Okay. So I think it makes sense now. Now we do the same thing for sell. Now, also something else you can do, or to know, is you can reuse certain parts. So for instance, the condition for closing a buy trade is the same condition for opening a sell trade. And the condition for opening a sell trade is the same condition for closing a buy trade. So the condition that I will need for closing a sell trade is the same condition that is used to open a buy trade. So I can just copy this, right? Paste. The reason I could easily go in and redo it, but just to let you know that you can copy and reuse certain parts, but make sure that you modify certain things if necessary. So we're going to change this to close sell condition. And then obviously we'll want to double check to make sure it is exactly what we want. So double click. Okay. Yeah, so double click, let me drag this here. So you can see the condition for closing a sell is when the fast moving average crosses below the slow. You can see fast crosses below the slow, so it's fine. And then we click on updates. And then what we want to do is close trade. So we want to close the sell trade. So we can modify this and say close sell trades. Okay. And make sure we modify or we adjust it to close only the cells, right? To close cells only, click on updates and connect this to this and connect this to this. So essentially, we can now probably group this together into one area. So let's create area, and we can rename this to say close area. Close trade function. Okay, so you can rename it whatever you like. So basically, we have, we've taken it a bit further. We define how we open, what we look to open a trade. So if there are no trades, we want our EA to check for the buy condition. If the buy condition is met, open a buy. Otherwise, check for the sell condition. And if the sell condition is met, open a sell. Now, remember, the EA is like a bot. It's as if you have somebody sitting in front of the computer and all they do is check the chart, right? So the EA is constantly checking. At the close of every candle, it is constantly checking the moving averages, because that's what we're looking at here, right? At every second. Now, it will now say, is there any open trade? So imagine that it has opened the trade. It will come and look. Every time it's asking, okay, is there any open trade? If the answer is yes, it will skip this whole area entirely and come to this side and say, is the trade a buy trade? If the answer is yes, it will look if the condition for closing a buy trade is met, then it will close the buy. Otherwise, it will ask, is the trade a sell trade? And then if the answer is yes, it will look for if the sell condition, the condition for closing the sell trade is met, and then it will close the sell trade. And if it is not met, that means it will just keep on moving on and moving on and moving on. So let's go and test what we've built and see if it works as we expected. Okay. So remember, we download our project from here. So download the .mq4 file. You can also download the .ex4 file. And so I'll show you something. Let's name this robot class. Okay, March 22nd. So that's the correct class. Let's just call it robot class. Oh, let's call it 22nd March. So it comes first. Let's call it 22nd March. Okay. And then let's download it. So we'll download our project, click on the .mp4 file, and this would load up. Now, for those of you, some of you, maybe you're into coding or into development, you can actually see the code because, so you see, we download it to our browser, to our file explorer. And so you can, once you download it, you can open it on a meta editor and you see the C++. Basically, it's MQL4 code file, but it is if you understand how to build in C++, you can also understand it. Basically, just that there are some other, what I say, syntax, but it's basically the same type of code description. Okay, so let's go and test what we just built. Let me open my MT4 and let's test what we just built. Okay, so give me a moment. Okay, so what we'll do now is we would test our project, and to do that, we need to copy or we need to paste our project in the data folder of our MT4 file. So we'll go to File, go to Open Data Folder, and then what we do is we go to the MQ4 file and then under export. So we'll go to where we downloaded it, meet downloads, cuts, and I'll paste it on the MQ and the export folder on my MQL4. So let's paste it. So that's it, right? So what we do now is under expert advisor here, refresh. So refresh under expert advisor. So refresh under expert advisor and you should see your project load up once it's done. Now, to access your MQ, that's a data folder on your MT4. That's what I just showed you now. What you want to do is go to File, right? So you can see our new project, 22nd March robot class. File, open data folder. It will take you to the data folder of that specific MT4, and then you select MQL4, and then you select expert. So data folder, MQL4, experts, and then you paste your program there. Okay, so now once we've done that, what we want to do is, so we'll refresh on the expert advisor tab here. And what we do is we go to our strategy tester window. So remember how to access your strategy tester window. This is what it looks like here. If you can't find it, go to view and then click on strategy tester, okay? Or just click on Control R. Now, under the strategy tester here, what you want to do is select the, obviously, first of all, you want to select the expert advisor. Since it's an EA, it's not a script. If you build a script and you are probably, or an indicator, you do that, but it's an expert advisor, so you click use expert advisor, and then you select your code, robot. In this case, that's 22nd March robot class. So click on that. The pair we want to test it on is euro-dollar. Leave this as every click. Make sure you use. So we're going to test this for the period of January 2021 till date. Obviously, I'm not going to allow it to get to the end because that'll take a long time. And then set it to visual mode. Now, under expert properties, you can modify certain. So this is you can see here that we have EMA fast, EMA slow, lots, and obviously the magic number will be defined. Don't tamper with that. But if we want to change the lot size to be tested from 0.1 to 0.2, we can just change it here, you see? And then if we want to change the moving average from 10 to 20 or whatever, we can change it here, right? So this is the reason, and it's a clear code. And because we defined it and we're referencing it, instead of having lots of different variables here that don't really make sense because you not even understand the syntaxes, we have clear defined variables that we understand and can reference or can change as we see fit. So that's one good thing. So let's click on OK. And then everything is set, we click on Start. So while we're waiting for it to load up, we're going to set our charts to reflect the moving averages so we can see what's happening. So go to moving average. So remember, the moving averages we are looking at is the 10-period moving average, which would be, let's make it red, let's make it blue. And then we'll also add our 20-period moving average, which would be red. Right? And those are the two, right? So we click on that. And once it's loaded, it should fly. So let's so once this, we just allow this to load up once so what it's doing is drawing in all the data from the period that we just set. That is from the 1st of what do you call it, January. So which is from the 1st of January 2021 to today's dates. Okay, so now you can see it's loading. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pause, right? So you can see that it took a sell trade. It took a sell trade here. You can see it. So let me zoom in a little bit. I know some of you might be looking at this from your phone. So you see it took a sell trade here, right? Can you see that? You should be able to see it. So it took a sell trade there. Where's my... Yeah, so it took a sell trade here. Why did he take that sell trade? Well, because the red moving average crossed below the green or the blue. You can see it here. I don't know, it might not be so clear because it's quite small, but let me try and zoom in even further, see if you see that. Okay. So see where it took the sell trade here. Can you see this? This is where it sold. But look at the candle. At the close of this candle, you can see that the red moving average went above the green, the blue. That means the slow moving average went above the fast, or the fast went below the slow. And that was why it sold. Now, with our new code, it will keep selling until the blue moving average crosses above the red. So let's see if that's what happened. So we are still in a sell. Notice that we are still in a sell. Now, what would have happened in our previous example is it would have used stop loss and take profits, right? So if you enter the sell here, it will place our stop loss 30 pips above and our take profits 60 pips below. In this case, you'd have made money, right? However, if the market continues to move, you know, this will be the only profit it makes. I don't know if that makes sense, if you get the idea, okay? Now, so let's continue to play and see how it goes. Okay, so notice it's still in that trade. Let me see where it closes the trade. It's still in that sell trade. So why it's, you know, sorry, let me just zoom out a little bit so we can see where we are. You can see it's still in this sell trade, right? And now remember, you can, obviously you can manually close the trade at certain point if you wish. You can, don't worry, we'll look at some optimizing later. So let's continue to move. And it's still selling. And it's still selling. No. Something is wrong with our code. Let's see. So this is where you have debugging and it's supposed to close here, right? So basically from what we told it to do, let me go back. From what we told you to do, it's supposed to sell because this red one crossed above the blue. But it's supposed to close that sell when the red one crosses above the blue. So apparently there's something wrong with the code. There's something wrong in our definition. So we'll go and debug it. It's actually good that it happens so we can probably see how how you handle certain things like this. So ideally, basically what we told you to do is sell because of the crossover of the moving average and close the sells or buy because of the crossover of the moving average. You're supposed to buy there, supposed to sell here and close that sell at this point. So let's see why it didn't do that. Let's clear all of this. We probably made some mistake in our chat. So let me go back to our development screen. So what we did is we say, if there are no trades, what's the condition for buying? So let me click on this. If there are no trades, if the fast cross above the slow, okay, that looks good. What do we do? We execute a buy, no stop loss, no take profit. And then if the fast cross, so for the sell, the fast crosses below the slow, we look to sell, looks good. So the opening of the trade is okay. The closing of the trade, how we manage the close trade, I think that's where the challenge is. Now, so there was a sell trade, and it's supposed to close that sell trade when the fast moving average crosses above the slow. Okay, it looks good to me. So when the fast crosses above the slow, okay, and double click on what it's supposed to do. So supposed to close sell. Okay. Oh, see the problem here. So here we are supposed to specify if sell, right? Because what happened here, you see how this kind of. So what happened here was, let me go back to our MT4. So what happened here is the condition for opening the cell was met, so it opened the cell. But then anytime it looked, it could not see the condition for closing the cell, because here instead of changing this to filter only cells, it was still buy and sell. So that's why that didn't work. So we're going to just download it again and reuse it. So we've saved that. I think we've updated it. Yeah, so it's updated now. Let me be sure of the buy. The buy looks good. And we download it again. So we're going to go through the process again to download it. Okay, let's download it again. Once it's saved on our system, we go back to our MT4. Okay. Then we obviously do the same thing, go back to our file data folder. You need to go and copy our new downloaded file. So let's get that from our downloads. So I'm going to just cut it, Control X, go back. Okay, so go to the MP4 file, expand, and then just Control V to paste it. It should ask me to replace the old one, which is what I want to do. So let's replace the old one. And let's close this. And so what we'll do is we'll refresh on the expert advisor window here. So click on refresh. And once that is done, I think that is reflected. So we're going to stop this one. So let's stop this. And so we'll go and do the same thing here. Make sure we look at, so it should still be the same name. Properties, everything looks okay. So let's click on start, right? Now, all things being equal, we should see our code work better now. So let me just put in our moving averages so we can see what's happening. Okay, so that's the 20 period moving average. Let's add the 10 period moving average as well. Okay. And I think we're good. So once it loads up collates the data, we would see the effect of what we just did. Okay, so let's see how that goes. In the meantime, I hope it's making sense. It's clear what we're discussing here. I hope you understand the idea of what we're doing. And you know, if you're enjoying the class, just let me know. Okay, so I think this should be ready. Okay, so it's good to go. So now you could see the same thing. We open a cell here, right? Why did the EA open the cell? Well, so let me zoom in a little bit. He opened the cell because the fast moving average crossed above the slow. You can see where it sold at this candle here, because at this point here, the blue one came below the red one. Okay, so let's see how it will manage its position. Okay, so let's continue to move forward. So it's still selling, and it should close. Wait, hold on. I'm mixing up something here. Okay, so okay, so let me just fix this. Okay, so we fixed the issue. The challenge, the problem was that I don't know why that wasn't supposed to be a problem, because we referenced so this is what I did, right? So I did if trades, I let both of them be there, put the buy and sell, so you can look at the buy and sell and make the decision nonetheless. So we go back here and we say, so let's see how it works now. So moving average, 10 moving average, and let's also add the 20 period exponential moving average, and we'll make this one yellow. Okay, so and then so we looked, it will buy when the red one crosses above the yellow, and it will sell when the yellow crosses when the red crosses below the yellow. It will close the buy when the red crosses below the yellow. That means the close the criteria for opening a buy is the same for closing a sell. So let's play that and see. So it opens a sell trade, right? And that is running, and it should stay in that sell trade. So it should stay selling. So we should keep seeing a sell on this market as long as the yellow moving average is above the red. Okay, so let's see. And it is still above, and then you can see it, right? So at this point here, right, you can see that at this point here, where the yellow moving average crosses below or the red crosses above, it closed the sell. You can see it, the sell was closed, but that same criteria for closing the sell is the same for opening a buy. So you opened a buy and closed the sell. Now, if you look at our graph here, you can see the graph curve on our charts. You know, our equity curve has gone up. Okay, so let's continue to see. The challenge with this one now is every close of a trade will be the opening of the other side. Okay, so let's see how this moves. And it opened a sell, it opened a buy, so you can see it. Buy is the blue line. It opened a buy here, it closed it for a loss. So if you check our graph curve now, it should tip a little bit. But you can see the advantage of this as to the previous one. So see where it sold from here, as you can see from the line. We had a sell here, and it stayed in that sell and closed it here. So it was able to capture most of the trend, as opposed to if we were using 30 pips stop loss and 60 pips take profit. Okay, so that's what we were trying to do, or what we were trying to accomplish when we decided to optimize it this way. So let's play it and see how it will continue to do. What you'll notice is this will work well when the market is trending. So for instance, you can see it executed a buy now, and it's still in this buy trade, and it will stay in this buy trade as long as this two moving average continue to stay in this week. So let's see, and then it closes there. So here's where maybe a disadvantage, because if you were using a fixed stop loss and take profits, your stop loss might be 30 pips and your take profit might be 60, and you'd have hit 60, but instead you're ending up closing with a smaller stop loss, a smaller take profit, right? However, what it loses or what it lacks in the advantage there, disadvantage here, it will gain. Instead of making small 60 pips here, you might end up making 300 or 400, something like that, okay? Now, let's allow this continue to go. You'll see that this will work best in a trending market as opposed to a ranging market, right? So, but what you notice is when the market begins to range like this, you can see a lot of back and forth. The moving averages are crossing back and forth each other. It is, you keep taking losses until you see the next explosion, okay? So what we'll do, I'll just allow this to continue to run, is now we've optimized our EE from what we did the last class to this class, where we decide to use instead of using fixed stop loss, we decide to use dynamic stop loss, right? And you can see that's why it will capture trend like this. However, when the market is ranging, the EA will struggle because it will just keep taking losses and losses. So we'll see how we can maybe optimize that in a different class. So we'll see how we can optimize that. We'll discuss that, and we'll see how we can build the EA, continue from this build actually to optimize it to do what we want it to do, okay? I was hoping I would probably be able to fix all of them into one class, but the class has extended way longer than I expected. So we'll do that in a subsequent training, okay? So that's where we come to the end of our session for today. Remember, I hope you enjoyed the class, by the way. Remember that this particular recording would not be uploaded, will not be available to everyone, would only be available to people who once the Telegram channel for content clients and all, then you can request your sales manager to give you access to the class. Okay. Otherwise, that will be it for the class. Let's see how the EA does. So far, well, it's not doing very well yet. But we'll see how we can optimize this. You can see the advantage of doing this. The only challenge here would be you'd have to turn on and turn off the EA at specific areas where you feel the market is trending, and when you believe the market is ranging, you probably would want to pause it or something like that. So that's our second EA class, and I think we've covered quite a lot, and I showed you some of the possibilities or some of the things you can possibly do. We'll take this a step further and try, and what we'll do next in the next class is we'll try and avoid this kind of market, this kind of scenario where the market is going back and forth and it's just picking plenty trades with lots of losses. So we'll see how we can curb that, reduce the amount of trades it picks, you know, within areas like this ranging market, and see how that can help optimize it even better. So thank you, everyone. If you have questions, now will be the time to ask questions. Just type in your questions down there and I'll do well to respond to them.